Hello everyone. My greetings to one and all. This is the second session on economic reforms since 1991. In the previous session, you have learnt about the need for economic reforms and some of its features. You have learnt that the stabilization policies need to be supplemented with the structural reforms to be on the sound footing of growth in the economy. And for this, changes have been initiated in industrial sector, foreign trade sector, financial sector, and so on. Before 1990 was the period of restrictions and controls. Many economists felt that there is a need for gradual disbanding of the regime of licenses, permits, controls and restrictions. And this was fulfilled by the policy of liberalization in the country. It meant the reduced role of government and enhanced role of private sector. So, in the new economic policy, freedom has been given to the entrepreneurs to make decisions and to have freedom to economic activities at all levels. So let's learn in details about liberalization. Many economists felt the need for the gradual disbanding the regime of licenses, permits, controls, protectionist duties and subsidies. It means a reduced role of government and a greater role of market forces. So the 90s saw the replacement of licenses, quota and permit Raj by economic reforms in the form of liberalization, privatization and globalization. The policy of liberalization means to put an end to those restrictions which became hindrances in the development and growth of the nation. By increasing competition among domestic industries, by encouraging foreign trade with other countries, by enhancing foreign capital and technology, by expanding global market frontiers of the country so that debt burden of the country gets reduced. Liberalization policy hence included industrial sector reforms, financial sector reforms, tax reforms, and foreign exchange reforms. Let's begin with industrial sector reforms. A number of reformative steps were taken to deregulate the industrial sector, like abolition of industrial licensing. The government abolished the licensing requirements of all the industries except for liquor, cigarettes, defense equipment, industrial explosives and dangerous chemicals. Pharmaceuticals too. So far as public sector is concerned, it was contracted, and a number of public sector industries which were earlier reserved under government control were reduced from 7 to 8 in the count. Presently there are only 3 in number, that is railways, atomic energy and defense. There has been de-reservation of production areas, that is the production areas which were earlier reserved for small-scale industries were de-reserved to all. This improved the land efficiency and developed more cultivation area across the country. Farmers were earlier restricted to use area owned by them. Later, during privatization, many private sector organizations entered into the sector of farming. So liberalization technically increased the production per hectare and supported the growth of the nation. And the producers were voluntarily allowed to expand their production capacity. They were now allowed to choose their own product and had their liberty to plan their production either for the domestic market or international markets. The products which had acceptability in international market were allowed to manufacture, then to upgrade and adopt technology which is more advanced. The business houses and the production units were allowed to import capital goods from advanced countries. So they were allowed to exchange the technological upgradation. Now next is financial sector reforms. It includes various financial institutes like commercial banks, investment banks, stock exchange operators, and foreign exchange dealers. Following reforms were enforced and initiated in these financial institutions. 1. Reducing various ratios that include statutory liquidity ratio and cash reserve ratio. 2. Competition from new private banks. The banking sector emerged in the private sector, and many players grabbed the opportunity to compete with the public sector banks. This led to the creation of positive competition and expansion of the service sector for the consumer. 3. There was a change in the role of RBI. RBI, being the apex institute, was a regulator earlier. Now it became a facilitator to the financial institutions. Then there were deregulation on interest rates. Banks were allowed to set their own interest rates on all business and commercial borrowings. But for saving deposits, the control was with the central government. Now assess yourself. A piece of information has been given to you. Read it thoroughly and answer the correct option. I will read it for you. Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act 1969 prevented the expansion of companies having assets worth rupees 100 crores or more and were called MRTP firms and were subject to several restrictions. After reforms, MRTP Act is replaced by the Competition Act 2002. The main motive of Competition Act was A. To control unfair trade practices in industrial and trade sector. B. To ensure freedom of trade and competition in Indian market. C. To promote competition with foreign firms in the global market. Or D. To promote competition among small-scale units for expansion. Please check your answer. The Competition Act, which was enacted in 2002, its main motive was to ensure freedom of trade and competition in the Indian market, simply because there were restrictions earlier. So, option B is the correct answer. Next is tax reforms. Government's taxation and public expenditure policies are a part of fiscal policy designed by the central government. So, the tax structure was simplified and taxation rates were reduced. This increased tax revenue for the government and reduced all tax evasion strategies which taxpayers used to follow to skip tax liability. As tax revenue and other revenues increased for the government, correspondingly, government started developing all the areas which were either undeveloped or underdeveloped. Another set of reforms were foreign exchange reforms, or external sector reforms. All foreign exchange reforms were initiated to increase international trade between the countries so that foreign exchange reserves gets improved. So some of these reforms were devaluation of rupee. The value of rupee was deliberately devalued to encourage exports and discourage imports. In 1991, to increase foreign exchange reserves, exports were promoted and all relevant benefits were provided to the exporters. Other measures were that quota system on imports was abolished. All import-related policies were trashed. Duties on various imported goods were reduced. All export duties were withdrawn. Such measures clearly indicate that how imports were discouraged and exports encouraged. Now have a look at this question and choose the correct option. The main objectives of India's exchange rate policy is to ensure that A. To have freedom of currency conversion related to capital inflows and outflows. B. To reflect economic fundamentals in the external value of rupee. C. To facilitate foreign exchange transactions at market-determined rates. Or D. To have an increase in foreign exchange reserves for transaction purposes. Please check your answer. The correct answer is option B. The main objective of India's exchange rate policy is to ensure that economic fundamentals gets reflected in the external value of rupee. I hope you have understood the liberalization process of economic policies of the country, which includes reforms in various sectors: trade, finance, tax, industry, and so on. Keep reading in the newspapers as you will find changes that are coming up because of liberalization, and have a record of these changes. With this, the session on liberalization comes to an end. The next session would focus on privatization. Till then, keep reading and keep learning.